My wife has an old game table that we have in the corner of our room, and I wanted to spruce it up. So the first thing I did was head down to the local hardware store and choose some of the inexpensive whiteboards. Want to make sure that they're as straight as possible, especially for this project. I brought the table outside and set it up. I want to use it to make the measurements and build it right on top of the table. All I had to do was take the 1x6s and lay them out. This table is about 6 foot long, so it's perfect for these length of boards. The difference with this type of build is we're actually building it upside down. You want the best looking boards to face downward, because then we'll turn it over. So I'm going to get them all looking good, face down, and even blemishes like that are okay. First thing I want to do is measure the board for some of my cross beams. I'm going to cut those a little bit short using my miter saw, and I'm going to use the same size boards as I did on the top. What I'm going to do is make sure all the boards are straight and level with each other, and then I'm going to mark out where I'm going to place the boards because I need to lay some good wood glue down. Want to make sure that we get it all over. People don't realize that glue is stronger than nails and screws. Once I get it down, go ahead and use a foam brush and get it all over. The more area it covers, the better it's going to adhere. Then I'm going to take my cross board. Remember, this table is upside down, and I'm going to put it on top of the glue and use finish nails to put it in. These nails are only 1 1/4 inch, so by nailing from the bottom, they won't show through the top. Once I got my 2 cross boards on that are making it strong and braced, I'm going to flip it over. Then measure it with the table, and it's time to put the side pieces on. I'm going to use some 1x3s with miter joints. That's going to give it a nice clean look. Next, I'm going to place it up next to the edge of the table, get it lined up, and use the nails to put it in place. If the board drops because of warping, just go ahead and use your hand and move the board into place. Place a nail in there, and it's going to give you just a nice smooth finish. Look how good that is. Another thing I need to mention, use that glue again, especially on the sides. We're going to put the glue on there and use the nails to put it in place. If on the ends the boards are a little off, again, use your hand, put it into place, and then watch this. Use a couple of nails, and it's going to hold it perfect for you. It's going to give it a nice smooth edge. Next, we got those little holes. I'm going to go ahead and use some wood putty. This goes on pink, but it dries beige. That way you know it's ready for sanding. I went ahead and used a higher grit sand paper, like a 220, and went ahead and sanded the whole table down. Some of your boards might have a stamp on it. Go ahead and just sand it. It will come right off. That's not a problem. Next, I got all the sawdust off, and it was time for staining. I chose my wife's favorite color, which is gunstock. I use a towel instead of a brush. I feel like I get a lot better result when I can smear it on like this instead of brushing it on. Make sure that I don't have any dark spots, and I go ahead and do the whole table, one little spot at a time. Want to make sure that you rub it all out, and make sure, again, like I said, no dark spots. After you get the stain on, it's time for clear polyurethane. That is what's going to give it a nice factory finish. This polyurethane goes on creamy color, but it dries clear. With a little sanding in between, this table is ready to go. Now, do you remember that old card table that we had? Well, watch this. This is amazing. Go ahead and put the new wood table down on top, and it's time to decorate. And it turned out beautiful. My wife was so surprised, and she loved it. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did making it. Gave you some ideas, and we can't wait to see you again on Hometalk.
I removed the top from a china cabinet because I really liked the bottom of it, but now I need to do something with the pine board on the top. Although this is only pine, it has a really nice wood grain, so I've decided I'm going to stain it instead of painting it. What I've done is I've given it one coat of this satin top coat, it's a water-based top coat, and I have in here 12 parts of the top coat to 1 part of the stain. And that is just going to allow me to build up the colour on this top very, very gradually, rather than just applying stain straight to the wood. Very, very subtle change in colour. And the more coats you put on, the darker it will obviously get. And depending on your working conditions, it's quite hot here today, so this is going to dry very quickly. My first coat is dry, and I do want to add more depth to this stain colour, but I still want to be able to see the grain. So I have actually added some more of the stain to the top coat, and my ratio is now 8:1. Now you have to kind of play around with this to get the colour that you want. But my first one was just too light, and I was going to have to do way too many coats to get it where I wanted to go. And this is looking much more like it for me now. It's the next day now. This is completely dry, and I love the colour I've achieved, and I can still see the grain effect. But now I'm going to put a stencil over the top. This is a large wall stencil, and I think it's going to work perfectly on here. My colour scheme for this side table is black and copper. And the first thing I'm doing is going all over this stencil with this black paint. It's the same paint I used on the body of the table. You can use a roller to do this, but I actually prefer stenciling with a brush. I've taped it down and I've covered the parts here that are on that darker strip of wood, because I'm not going to stencil over that bit, or on the tiny little strips at the side. Taking the paint from the lid of this jar of paint and offloading it onto a piece of kitchen paper. And I can use that as my palette as we go along, as the paint builds up there. You don't want to apply too much paint because there is always a fear that it's going to seep underneath the stencil. Now I'm going to use this really lovely copper paint. Make sure you give any metallic paint a really good stir before you use it, because often all the goodness lies in the bottom. And I'm now going to go over the black that I've already done, but I'm not going to cover it all completely. I'm going to be kind of doing it fairly randomly. See how vibrant that is. Okay, so I will carry on doing the whole table in that manner, and then I will come back and show you how it looks. Here's my finished stenciling. Makes for a very subtle design when you use two colours over the stencil like that, and I can still appreciate the wood grain underneath. I'm now going to give this 2 coats of the same top coat that I used before, and then I will show you it finished. And here is my finished table. Very easy stenciling on wood so that you can still see the grain. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and I have inspired you to have a go. I'm Julie McDowell. I'll see you next time.